Hello everyone. Today we're going to talk about Bitcoin, which is trading at around $114,600. And let me remind you that in the previous review we paid attention to the level of $117,420 because it's a key support. Let me remind you that Bitcoin has been trading in this range for quite a long time, for many days. On the bottom, it was limited by the 117,420 level, and on the top by 119,841. There was a breakout downward when it seemed like Bitcoin was only going to go down. But it stopped right here, at the 50-day moving average. And after that, it started to break through this range upwards, indicating that the growth is continuing. And we expected that the growth would continue at least until the July high was updated, which is exactly what happened in the end. Right here, we updated the July high. Previously, the July high was at this level. And after that, there was a pullback down with a breakout in the opposite direction of that same range. That means this movement should develop further, but with a fairly high probability it will go below this zone, which we've already visited. Well, below this zone we have another support level, the 100-day moving average, which is shown in red. Now let's take a look at what prospects we have, or rather what prospects Bitcoin has. So the first level, yes, the key one. Let's put the magnet back in place. I had it turned off. So the first level is 112,046. This is the most important support at the moment. The 100-day moving average, the red one, is approaching that level. But let's put it this way. We've already been here. Both the establishment of this new significant high and the clear presence of this bearish engulfing pattern that we can distinctly observe strongly suggest that this particular low point is highly likely to be decisively broken in the near future. So it makes sense to look for a support point where Bitcoin might find its footing right here around the 100-day moving average, which is in the area of $110,000 to $111,000. Obviously, if it comes down here, it might touch it with a wick, maybe even a deep wick. Usually this happens within about 1.5%. So if it's a false breakout, though anything can happen, 1.5% would be somewhere around here. Now let's see where exactly 1.5% is. Well, that's $109,000. So we have two potential downside targets, 112,000 and 109,000. But there's one very important point. If today's candle, this has happened more than once, it's very important to wait for the daily close. If today's candle suddenly gets bought up and closes above the 50-day moving average, especially with a green body, and ideally the upper shadow should be smaller than the body, this would indicate a potential reversal and a move upward at least toward the 117,420 area, and with a high probability to the upper boundary of the range at 119,840. But if we see that today's candle closes below the 50-day moving average, then with a very high probability we could see a move toward the 112,500 level and potentially 109,074. Well, that's approximate. We're using very rough numbers here. About 1.5% for a breakout, the 100-day moving average, and so on. That's the situation we have at the moment. Now let's see what could happen next. First, we could see a move toward this 112 level and then a reversal upward. And upward to where? Upward to here. Look, right to the 50-day moving average. Because it's a pretty typical situation when we hit an important level, then retest the moving average, and then something happens. If there's a breakout, we go up. If there's a bounce, we go down. That's it. The same scenario could play out from the 100-day moving average, the 100-day, the 50-day. And there are options here as well. We could keep moving between the 100-day and 50-day, forming a narrowing range, and then eventually break out in one direction. Or we could break through the 50-day, and then once again our first target would be 117,420, and the second target would be 119,040. That's how it looks at the moment. So we need to watch very closely how the daily candle closes, and then draw the appropriate conclusions. If it closes with a red body, then with a high probability, a very high one, we'll see movement towards the area of 112,500 or 109,174. If it closes with a green body, then 117,220 is almost certain, and potentially even 119,840. After that, we'll need to analyze the situation as it develops. For now, it looks more like a short, a move down to the 100-day moving average, around $110,000. On that note, I suggest we wrap up. The video will be quite short, but I hope it's informative, and I hope my scribbles here don't bother you too much. Subscribe and leave your comments. See you next time. Goodbye.